Jake Monroe sat alone in the control room of Station Delta 7, a small Earth outpost floating near the edge of known space. The stars outside looked calm, but Jake knew something felt wrong. He had been stationed here for 4 months, doing maintenance work, fixing broken systems. And watching empty space, it was supposed to be a quiet post, boring even, but tonight. The air felt heavier, too quiet, too still. Suddenly, a sharp beep, beep, beep echoed from the console. Jake leaned forward and saw the signal a ship was approaching, but it wasn't human. The design, the heat signature, the speed, it didn't match anything in Earth's database. Jake frowned, pressed a few buttons, and zoomed in on the visuals. What he saw made his heart race. A giant, dark red warship, shaped like a beast's skull, moved slowly toward the station. It wasn't part of the Galactic Alliance, and it definitely wasn't friendly. The computer flashed red, unidentified hostile vessel, high threat. Jake reached for the emergency transmitter, but before he could send a warning, the screen turned black. Then a strange hologram appeared, glitchy and cold. A female voice spoke in a deep, commanding tone. "Do not resist. The Empress arrives. In her heat, no male shall escape." Jake blinked, confused. Heat. Empress. Was this some kind of weird alien message? A prank? But his gut said no. This was real and dangerous. He quickly activated the lockdown protocol, sealing all main doors. Then he grabbed his stun pistol and flashlight and ran down the hallway. He had to hide, at least until he figured out what was happening. The ship outside was docking slow, deliberate like a predator stalking its prey. As Jake passed the medical room, he noticed something strange. The air was hot, almost humid, and a strange scent filled his nose. It was sweet, but sharp. Like burned flowers and fire. His skin tingled, and his heartbeat sped up. He opened the door to medbay and froze. There, on the floor, was a body. It was Officer Lewis, the station's doctor. His eyes were open in shock, and strange. Glowing marks burned across his neck and chest. Jake backed away, panic rising in his chest. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A low growl echoed through the vents. He wasn't alone. He turned and sprinted toward the engineering bay, the closest place with a reinforced door. As he ran, he heard heavy footsteps behind him, slow, strong, steady. He didn't dare look back. He made it into the engineering room and slammed the door shut, locked it, bolted it, and turned off the lights. Then he crouched behind a crate. Breathing hard, he tried to think, tried to stay calm. What was that voice talking about? Who was this Empress? And what did she want with him? Jake's mind raced as he checked the logs on his datapad. There had been legends about alien Queens Velari females. Tall, deadly, and powerful. They were born warriors, trained in battle. From birth, but once every decade, they went through something called heat. It wasn't like human emotion. It was biological and unstoppable during that time. A Velari Empress would seek a male she could bond with, but the process was dangerous, even fatal, if a male resisted. He would die if he submitted. He might still die. Jake swallowed hard. A sudden thump shook the door. She was here. Jake could hear breathing deep and steady just outside. And then silence. But something scratched the metal slowly, like claws dragging across the wall. Then, a voice, low, soft, chilling, human. "I smell you." Jake's heart nearly stopped. He knew he had to move, but where? He checked the back. There was a vent, barely large enough to crawl through. He squeezed inside and pulled the cover closed behind him. The metal was hot, almost burning his skin. As he crawled deeper into the vent, he heard the door behind him blast open. A strange blue light filled the room, and then a sound he would never forget. Not a scream, not a roar. A purr. A dangerous, satisfied purr. She had arrived. And she had chosen her prey. Jake kept crawling, sweat pouring down his face. His only goal now survive the night, but deep down, something told him this was just the beginning. Jake crawled through the narrow vent. Every movement slow and quiet. He could still hear her footsteps, soft, steady, and terrifying. They weren't like boots, they were barefoot, but each step echoed like thunder in his ears. She was in the room now. It's the same room he had just escaped, and somehow she knew he was near. Jake paused, held his breath, and listened. Silence. Then her voice whispered again, so soft, it felt like it touched his skin. "You smell afraid." "Good." He clenched his fists, heart pounding. He had to keep going. He crawled deeper until the vent dropped into the old water room, a place unused since last year. Jake pushed open the grate and dropped down, landing. With a soft thud, he rolled to the corner and pressed himself against the wall. There was water dripping from a broken pipe. The sound masked his breathing for now. He took out his stun pistolet, only had 2 charges left, but would it even work on her? He didn't know much about the Velari race, only that their females were taller than humans, stronger than trained soldiers, and faster than any predator he'd ever studied. But there was one detail that chilled him most during their heat. Their minds shifted. They weren't cold killers. No, they became possessive, obsessed, emotionally unstoppable. She didn't want to kill him. Not yet. She wanted to claim him. Jake's thoughts were broken by a loud bang. The vent above him exploded open, and she dropped down, landing silently. She was 7 feet tall. Her skin a shimmering dark blue, almost black. Golden tattoos glowed across her arms and chest, and her long white hair flowed like liquid light. Her eyes glowed purple, locked onto his face like a hunter who had waited too long. "You're mine now," she said in a calm, deep voice. Jake raised his stun pistol, his hands shaking. "Don't come closer," he warned. She tilted her head, smiling gently. "If I wanted you dead, you would already be ash," she whispered. She took a step forward, slow and graceful. Jake fired zap. The stun bolt hit her shoulder, but she barely flinched instead of falling. She groaned like the pain gave her pleasure. "You are strong," she said softly. "I chose well." Jake backed into the wall, desperate. He had 1 shot left, but she was already in front of him. Her hand pressed against his chest, and he felt the warmth of her skin. Not hot like fire, but burning with something else, something living. Her touch made his heart race. Not just in fear, but confusion. She leaned in, her lips close to his ear. "Do not run from me again," she said. "If you do, I heat. We'll break this station, and maybe you too." Jake stared into her glowing eyes, trying to stay calm. "This isn't right," he whispered. "I'm not." "I'm not your kind." She didn't answer. She just slowly closed her eyes and placed her forehead gently against his. Suddenly, Jake felt something, visions flashing in his head. Images of burning battlefields, giant warships, her standing tall with blood on her blade. Then, memories of her alone, sitting on a cold throne. No one beside her, a queen feared by all, desired by none. He stumbled back, breaking the connection. What was that? She looked at him with pain in her eyes. "You felt my truth," she said. "I don't want to take. I want to be chosen." But her body was trembling now. The heat was rising inside her. Hit wasn't her choice anymore. It was biology, tradition, instinct. Jake ran again. He darted through the other door and down the corridor, this time toward the cryo chamber. The one room cold enough to weaken her, at least a little. She followed, but slower now. Breathing heavy, not because she was tired, but because the heat was burning her from inside. Jake entered the chamber and locked the door. He activated the frost system, and cold mist filled the room. He backed into the corner, and waited. She arrived moments later, breaking the lock and stepping in, but as the cold air hit her, she staggered. Dropping to her knees, Jake raised his pistol, ready to use his last charge, but then she looked up at him not like a beast, not like a queen, but like someone begging. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered, voice cracking. "I don't want to be alone anymore." Jake hesitated, finger on the trigger. He should fire, escape, run, but something inside him froze. Her face was calm now, almost human, and the way she looked at him. No one had ever looked at him like that. The cold mist swirled around them as they stared at each other in silence. She crawled closer, then stopped, and Jake, for the first time, didn't move, but somewhere deep in the base, a second signal. Arrived. Another Velari ship was on its way, and this time it wasn't coming for love. The cold mist swirled around Jake and the Empress. She sat on the floor, her breath shallow, her powerful body trembling from within. Jake's pistol was still in his hand, but the last charge remained unused. His heart told him not to shoot, but his mind whispered that he'd regret it. He stared at her, this war queen who could crush him in seconds, and yet she looked vulnerable. She touched the frost-covered floor with her palm and groaned softly. "Oh, the cold helps," she murmured. "But it won't last long." Jake knelt down slowly, not sure why he was doing it. Maybe because she didn't attack, maybe because she had shown him her memories, or maybe because he didn't want to feel like prey anymore. "What's happening to you?" he asked. She lifted her glowing eyes to him. "My heat is reaching its peak," she said softly. "If I don't complete the ritual, I will go mad." Jake narrowed his eyes. "Ritual? What does that even mean?" The Empress leaned back against the wall, her breath growing heavier. "In Velari tradition," she explained, "an Empress must choose a male, not just for mating, but for bonding. 3 nights, she continued. He must survive with her. Through the heat, the visions, the madness, Jake's mouth went dry. Survive. He repeated. She nodded slowly. If he endures, she becomes his forever. Jake stepped back. "This is insane," he muttered. "I'm not a Velari. I'm not even your species." The Empress gave a faint smile. "But you are strong," she whispered. "You resisted me. That makes you worthy." Jake turned away, pacing in the cold room. This couldn't be real. He wasn't a soldier, just a mechanic who happened to be alone on the wrong station at the wrong time. An alien queen wanted to bond with him through some deadly ritual. He looked back at her. She was shaking now, trying to hold herself together. He could see her golden tattoos flickering like warning lights. She's losing control, Jake thought. And if she snapped inside this small room, he wouldn't survive. He moved toward the cryo controls and activated another blast of freezing mist. The Empress screamed not in pain, but in frustration. "Don't," she growled. "You're making it worse." Jake looked at her with sharp eyes. "I'm trying to help. You're trying to slow me down." She snapped, standing up. Slowly, her body glowed with heat, steam rising off her skin despite the cold. "You want to run," she whispered, taking a step closer. "But part of you doesn't want to." Jake lifted the stun pistol again. "Stop right there," he warned. The Empress paused, her eyes flicking between his weapon and his face. Then she slowly sank to her knees again. "I'm not here to force you," she said softly. "I want you to choose me." Jake's hand dropped slightly, confused by her tone. He didn't understand everything she was saying, but he could feel that her heat wasn't just physical. It was emotional. She was fighting herself just to talk without hurting him. Suddenly, the station's alarm blared. Again, another ship was arriving. Jake ran to the console and checked the radar. A second Velari signal, faster and sharper than the first. A different class of ship, smaller but just as deadly. The Empress stood up, her body tense. "She's here," she whispered. "Who?" Jake asked. "My sister," the Empress growled. "She must have felt my heat starting. She thinks she can take you." Jake turned around fast. "Take me. I'm not a prize." But the Empress was already walking toward the exit, her heat making the door hiss as it opened. "I claimed you first," she said without looking back. "She won't have you." Jake followed, unsure why. She was dangerous, but her sister sounded worse. If this was some alien love war, he was the battlefield. And right now, he needed answers. They moved through the dark corridors of the station. The air was thick with pressure now, like the whole station was breathing. Jake felt lightheaded, his mind foggy. He kept seeing flashy Xalian temples, glowing fires, and a golden-eyed child. He shook his head, trying to focus. "What's happening to me?" He asked. "You're bonding," the Empress said without turning. "Our link has started." Jake stumbled. "But I didn't agree to anything." "You didn't need to," she replied quietly. "Your mind opened when you touched me." They reached the main hangar just as the second ship landed. The ramp opened, and a figure stepped out slimmer than the Empress, with silver tattoos and violet hair. Her eyes locked onto Jake instantly, and she smiled like a predator. "So, this is the human," she purred. The Empress stepped in front of him, her claws extended. "He is mine," she growled. The rival queen tilted her head, amused. "We'll see." Jake stood behind the Empress, stunned. He didn't want to be part of this, but he had a feeling now deep in his chest. He was already in too deep to escape. The hangar filled with tension so thick, even the air felt afraid. Jake stood frozen behind the Empress. Watching the new arrival descend from her ship, she moved like smoke. Graceful, dangerous, and confident, her silver tattoos shimmered under the low lights, and her violet eyes locked onto Jake like he was prey. The Empress stepped forward, placing herself between Jake and the newcomer. "Silvera," she said coldly, "still chasing what's not yours." The rival queen chuckled softly. "You're burning with heat, sister," Silvera said. "You'll be 2 weeks soon. I'll take the human, and you can rest in pieces." Jake's mouth went dry, so they were sisters. Both empresses, both in heat, and both believed he was the prize. "I am not a trophy," he muttered, backing away slowly. But the Empress didn't move. She raised one hand and summoned a glowing blade from her wrist. It lit up like lightning, humming with alien energy. "This station is mine, and he is under my protection," she growled. Silvera grinned, then unsheathed her own blade, sleeker, darker, and deadlier. "Then let's test your strength." Jake ducked behind a storage crate as the first clash echoed like thunder. Their swords met in the center of the hangar, sparks flying, heat rippling through the air. He had seen combat before, but nothing like this. These weren't simple fighters, they were living weapons. The sisters moved like shadows, slashing, blocking, roaring. Walls cracked, lights shattered, and the floor trembled under their rage. Jake's head spun. He needed to escape, but he couldn't leave the Empress. She had protected him. Even when her body was burning from within, a blast of silver energy struck near him, and he rolled aside. Just in time, Silvera had seen him, her eyes glowing with hunger. "You should have come with me willingly, human," she hissed. "Now I'll take you by force." She dashed toward him, but the Empress appeared in a blur, slamming her shoulder into Silvera's chest. The rival queen crashed into the wall, snarling, "You will not touch him." The Empress roared, but Jake could see the cracks forming. His Empress was slowing down, her breath heavy, her body trembling. The heat was becoming too much. Her own biology was turning against her. If the fight continued, she wouldn't last. Silvera smiled. Sensing the weakness, she hurled her blade like a spear straight at Jake. He froze, eyes wide, but the Empress threw herself in front of him. The blade pierced her shoulder, and she cried out in pain. Falling to her knees, Jake rushed to her side, catching her before she collapsed. "You protected me." "Again," he whispered. Her voice was weak but steady. "I told you. You're mine." Silvera walked closer. Confident now, she's finished. She said with a smirk, "Come to me, human. I'll make your end quick." Jake stood slowly, placing the Empress gently against the wall. His body trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "You think I'm yours to claim," he said, glaring at Silvera. "You think I'll just kneel because you're stronger?" She raised a brow, amused. "You're just a human," she said. "Soft, emotional, weak." Jake stepped toward her anyway. "Maybe," he said. "But I don't run from bullies." Before she could react, he grabbed a plasma torch from a nearby workbench and ignited it. The blue flame roared to life, and he swung it in a wide arc. Silvera jumped back, surprised. "Cute trick," she hissed. Jake held his ground. "Come closer and find out how." "Cute, it really is," Silver growled, but paused. She didn't expect him to fight. Didn't expect resistance. Suddenly, behind Jake, the Empress rose again, blood on her arm, but fire in her eyes. "You chose me," she whispered. "I feel it. Now. The bond is real." Jake turned and nodded. "I did," he said softly. "I'm with you," with a roar. The Empress charged again, this time not just for her, but for them both. Her blade glowed brighter, her strikes sharper, faster. Silvera realized to light, the bond had given her new strength. This wasn't just instinct, now it was love, choice, connection, and it made her deadlier. The fight ended with a blinding strike. The Empress slammed Silvera to the floor, blade to her throat. "Leave," she growled. Silvera hissed in defeat, eyes filled with hate. "You've changed," she spat. "You're soft now." "No." The Empress said, "I'm stronger because I'm not alone anymore." Silvera fled to her ship, retreating into the stars. Jake helped the Empress to her feet, her body still hot with fading heat. "You risked everything," she said, surprised. Jake gave a tired smile. "I didn't want to, but I couldn't." "Let her hurt you." They stood in the broken hangar, the fire of battle fading. But a new fire burned silently between them now. The ritual was not complete, but something far more dangerous had begun. Asterisk. The hangar was quiet now, except for the soft hum of broken machines and the flicker of damaged lights. Jake sat beside the Empress, both of them bruised. Both breathing hard, her wounds glowed faintly under the skin, but she didn't seem to care. She only looked at him, with something new in her eyes, not heat, not rage, but curiosity. "You protected me," she whispered. Jake gave a tired nod. "Didn't really have a choice," he said, then paused. "Well, maybe I did, but I couldn't watch you fall." The Empress stared at him for a long moment. Then, her head lowered, and she whispered something in her own language, soft and ancient. The translator implant didn't catch it, but Jake felt the meaning anyway. Something like gratitude, something close to respect. Maybe even more. They helped each other to the med station. Jake sprayed her wound with synth foam while she stood still, never wincing. Her skin was hot, too hot to touch, but not from fever. The heat was rising again, slowly returning after being pushed back by the cold and the fight. Jake felt his own body reacting too. His head ached, and strange flashes passed through his mind. Alien temples, thrones of bone, a crown of fire, and always her, the Empress, standing beside him in every vision. He backed away, shaking his head. "What is this?" he asked. "Why am I seeing things?" The Empress turned to face him, her voice soft but serious. "The bond has started," she said. "You touched my mind in the cold room." Jake blinked. That wasn't just a dream. She shook her head. "Our species bond through thought as much as touch." She explained, "When a queen begins her heat, her body searches for a mate. And if the male resists, her mind reaches deeper, trying to connect. Jake rubbed his temples. Well, I think it worked too well. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, almost guilty. But now, we share a link. Jake stared at her, unsure how to feel. Part of him was scared of her power, her instincts, her strength, but another part felt something strange. He didn't feel alone anymore. Even when she said nothing, he could feel her emotions, her frustration, her fear, her loneliness, and somehow, her desire not to hurt him. That was the strangest part of all. I don't know if I can survive this, Jake admitted. I'm not built for alien rituals. The Empress looked down. I was raised to fight, not to love, she said, but this heat. It's not just desire, Jake. It's memory. It's need. My body wants a mate. Yes, but my mind wants a partner. She stepped closer. I want you to choose, she said, her eyes glowing faintly. Not just survive, Jake. Looked into her eyes and saw something he hadn't expected. Fear. Not fear of him, not fear of pain, fear of rejection. This powerful Empress, leader of armies, was afraid that he might turn away. I don't hate you, Jake said quietly. But I don't understand you either, and I don't know if I'm ready. The Empress nodded. I will wait. But not for long. My body can only fight the heat for a short time. Jake understood. If her heat took over again, she would lose control. And if she did, she might kill him without meaning to. He had to make a decision fast, before he could say anything. The station lights flickered again. A system error warning flashed on the wall. Heat core overload sector 3, Jake cursed under his breath. That's the cryo chamber, he said. The power grid's burning out. They rushed through the hallway, side by side, the Empress moving slower now, her body fighting itself. The heat core of the station was being affected by her own energy. She wasn't just overheating. She was changing the station's systems. When they reached Sector 3, Jake could feel the temperature rising hot enough to melt plastic. The walls pulsed with a strange red glow. The Empress stopped, breathing hard, clutching her chest. I can't hold it much longer, she whispered. Jake looked around desperately, then spotted it, a neural sync pod. It was designed for emergency psychic connection, usually between human officers and their AI partners. But maybe, just maybe, it could stabilize their bond. Jake pointed to it. Get inside, he said. If we connect fully, maybe your body will stop overheating. She looked at the pod, unsure. If we bond now, there's no turning back, she said. Our minds, our instincts, our fates. We'll become one. Jake nodded slowly. I know, he said, but I'd rather die trying than watch you burn from inside. She stepped inside, the pod sealing around her. Jake climbed into the second chamber, his hands shaking, heart racing. The countdown began, and lights blinked. Jake felt the first pull, her emotions, her memories, her dreams, everything flooding into him. The last thing he heard before blacking out was her voice in his mind, soft, full of sorrow and hope. Don't let go, human. I'm falling. Jake opened his eyes slowly. But the world around him was no longer metal walls and glowing consoles. It was light, soft, golden light stretching forever. He floated above a sea of stars. And beside him was the Empress. But she didn't look the same. Her body glowed with warmth. Her armor gone, her face soft and peaceful. Her voice echoed inside his mind, not through words, but through feeling. She was sharing everything with him, her childhood on a frozen war moon, her first battle at age 8. The day she became Empress by defeating her own commander, but also the night she cried in silence, the years without touch, the loneliness behind her strength. Jake tried to speak, but no words came, only thoughts. And somehow, she heard them all. I didn't ask for this, he thought. She replied instantly, neither did I. But we were chosen. The pod had forced the bond into full sync. Their minds were now deeply connected. He felt her body tremble even while he lay still. He could sense her pain, but also her calm, the heat that had once threatened to consume. Her had begun to fade, not gone, but under control because of the bond. Suddenly, a sharp alarm cut through the quiet. Jake's vision snapped back to the real world. The pod doors hissed open and cold air rushed in. He gasped for breath, eyes wide, and turned toward the other pod. The Empress sat inside, her eyes closed, her chest rising slowly. Then she opened her eyes. They were different, no longer burning with heat, but glowing with something gentler. Warmth, connection, trust. Jake helped her out of the pod. She stumbled at first, then steadied herself, using his arm. "I feel clear," she whispered, surprised. "You anchored me." Jake smiled faintly. "Wasn't easy," he said. "Your memories nearly knocked me out." She chuckled softly for the first time, a sound that made the room feel less heavy. "I saw yours too," she said. "Your Earth, your broken heart, your little sister who died in the floods." Jake looked down, eyes wet. "I haven't talked about her in years." "You didn't need to," she replied gently. "I was there for the first time." They stood not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something else. Not lovers, not yet, but two souls tied by choice, not by force. Then came the message, a blinking red light on the station's main console. Jake walked over and played the transmission. "Human rescue team arriving. In 10 minutes, prepare for extraction." He froze. Earth was coming. And they would not understand what had happened here. They wouldn't see her as a queen in heat who found peace. They would see her as a threatened alien who needed to be eliminated. Jake turned toward the Empress. "They're coming for me," he said, "and they'll bring weapons." She stood tall now, her strength returned, her glow softer but steady. "Then I will leave," she said quietly. "I won't let them kill me for touching the one I care for." Jake stepped closer. "You don't have to run," he said. "I can explain, make them understand." But she shook her head. "Your people won't understand our bond," she whispered. "They will shoot before they ask questions." Jake paced the floor, torn in two. If he stayed with her, Earth would call him a traitor. If he left her behind, she'd be hunted by others, and the bond, this strange connection, would slowly break. She would suffer again, and so would he. The Empress walked to the hangar doors and looked out into space. "I can return to my world," she said, "but I will carry this pain forever." Jake stared at her. He thought about Earth, his empty home, his silent apartment, his lonely meals. Then he looked at her, this powerful, dangerous, lonely Empress who had opened her soul to him. And for once, he knew exactly what he wanted. "I'll go with you," he said, voice steady. The Empress turned, her eyes wide. "You would leave your world?" Jake nodded. "There's nothing left for me there," he said, "but with you, maybe I can start something new." She stepped closer, holding out her hand, not to drag him, not to command him, but to invite him. "Then let's leave before your kind arrives," she said softly. Jake smiled, took her hand, and together they walked toward her warship, no longer enemies, no longer strangers. As the human rescue ship entered orbit, they launched quietly into the stars. No trace, no signal, no goodbye, only two souls. One human, one alien, bound by heat, saved by choice. The stars moved past the window of the alien warship like silver streaks. Jake stood in silence, looking out as Earth faded behind them. His heart was heavy, but not with regret. He had made his choice, and now his new life had begun. The Empress stood behind him, her presence calm and powerful. She no longer radiated heat or rage. Something had changed after the bond. She was still a queen, but now she was also something softer. She walked up beside him, watching the stars with him in silence. Then, after a long pause, she spoke. "No one has ever left their world for me." Jake gave a small smile. "No one ever made me feel seen." Before she turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "I don't know what comes next," she said. "My kind. We don't live with humans. We rule, we conquer, we burn." Jake shrugged. "Maybe it's time someone taught your people how to live." She raised a brow, amused. "And you think you can teach me that?" "I already did," Jake replied. "You just don't admit it yet." The warship's halls were dark and quiet. Only a few royal guards remained on board, loyal to the Empress and ordered not to interfere. They bowed when she passed, but gave Jake cold stares. He was still an outsider to them. A human, a mate, chosen during heat, not tradition. But the Empress didn't care for their looks. She stood proudly beside Jake in every corridor. And when they reached her royal chamber, she opened the door with her palm and led him inside. It wasn't a roomette, was a garden, a hidden biome inside the ship. Filled with glowing alien trees and water that shimmered like moonlight. Jake stopped, stunned. "This is beautiful. This is where my soul rests," she said softly. "It's the only place I've ever felt safe." She stepped into the glowing water, letting it rise to her knees. Jake followed slowly. The warmth of the water soothed his aching muscles, and the silence wrapped around them like a soft blanket. She turned to face him. "The bond between us is complete," she said, "but the choice to stay in my life, that's yours." Jake looked around, then at her. He didn't need time to think. "I already chose," he said, "back on the station, when I stepped into that pod." "You're not just a queen," he added. "You're a woman who's never been loved the right way." She closed her eyes, her chest rising slowly. "Then teach me," she whispered. "Teach me how to be something more." Jake took her hand, and this time there was no heat, only warmth. They stood there in the water, under glowing leaves, two beings from different worlds. No longer prisoner and queen, no longer prey and predator, but partners. For days, they traveled through space together. Jake learned about her people, their ways, their history of war and pride. She listened when he spoke about Earth, about laughter, music, kindness. They were opposites, but they started to understand each other. She let go of her need to dominate, and he let go of his fear to lead. One day, the ship entered Velari space. A grand planet with golden skies and fire-colored oceans appeared below. The Empress looked out the window, unsure. "My council will not accept a human by my side," she said quietly. "They will call me weak." Jake stepped forward. "Then let me be your weakness," he said, smiling. "Because I promise your weakness might save your whole world." The warship landed with honor, its arrival seen by thousands. But when the Empress stepped out, not alone, but hand in hand with a human, the gasps echoed like thunder. Her people stared, confused, angry, stunned. The council members stood frozen at the foot of the palace stairs. "This is madness," one of them said. "This breaks all tradition." The Empress raised her voice, strong and clear. "Tradition has kept us alone," she said. "This man did not beg for my love, nor did I take him by force. We bonded, not by blood, but by choice." The crowd murmured, the silence cracking. Jake stepped beside her and bowed slightly. "I may not be strong like your warriors," he said, "but I stood between your queen and death. I protected her not because I had to, but because I wanted to." Slowly, the people began to lower their weapons. Some still glared, but others nodded with silent respect. And just like that, the tide began to shift. Back inside the palace, the Empress removed her crown and placed it gently in Jake's hands. "I don't want a throne," she whispered. "I want a life." Jake looked into her eyes and said the words he once never imagined saying to an alien. "Then, let's build one. Together, and in the heart of a warrior planet, under alien skies. A human and a queen started something new, not just a love story, but a legend of choice, change, and a fire that didn't burn them because it brought them home.